A knight's true face was not his own, but the symbols blazing on his shield. In the roar of a medieval charge, heraldry was the silent language that announced a warrior's name, his lineage, and his purpose. We recognize these colorful emblems from stories, yet their real power as tools of identity and political strategy remains a hidden world. By the end of this journey, you will be able to read a coat of arms like a map of medieval influence. We will uncover why a golden lion meant more than courage and how a simple rule of color could shape one's path on the battlefield. What one symbol would you choose to represent your own story for centuries to come that anonymity was the problem? Encased head to toe in mail and then hidden behind a solid steel great helm, a knight became a faceless, impersonal unit. On the dusty, chaotic field of battle, with vision narrowed to a slit, how could you tell friend from foe? A misjudged charge against your own lord's men was not just a blunder, it was a catastrophe. The solution was as practical as it was brilliant. The shield, that large, curved surface always facing the opponent, became the billboard for a knight's identity. The very first coats of arms were not complex lineages, but stark, bold statements. A single, vibrant color split by a contrasting band, or a fierce animal rendered in simple lines. These were designed for one purpose: to be read instantly across a crowded field by an ally who needed to find you, or an opponent who needed to know exactly who they were facing. This was a system born from pure necessity, a visual shout in a world of muffled noise. Yet from this simple need for clear identification, an entire language of power and lineage would soon grow. But a language needs rules to be understood. The very first and most unbreakable law of heraldry was born from the dust and din of the battlefield. It is called the Rule of Tincture. This principle was not about aesthetics, it was about survival. Its command was simple and absolute. You must never place a color directly onto another color, and a metal must never be placed on another metal. The metals were the light tones, argent for silver or white, and/or for gold or yellow. The classic colors were the deep, dark hues, gules for red, azure for blue, sable for black, and vert for green. This rule guaranteed one thing above all else: stark, undeniable contrast. Imagine a knight charging through a haze of smoke and flying dirt. A red lion on a blue field would have been a murky, indistinct smudge, impossible to identify until it was too late. But a golden lion on a field of deep blue, that was a beacon, that was a statement that could not be missed. To break this rule was not just a design flaw, it was a mark of ignorance that could bring dishonor. It created a false arms, a visual lie that betrayed the very purpose of the system. This foundational law is the key that unlocks the logic of every shield you will ever see, a direct echo from a time when being seen clearly was a matter of life and death. Beyond the strict rule of contrast lay a world of hidden meaning. The colors themselves were a vocabulary, each one a word in a silent declaration of character. Gules, the deep, vibrant red of a fresh commitment, was far more than a bold visual choice. It was the color of the warrior's very essence, a public promise of martial strength, magnanimity, and a solemn readiness for a greater purpose. A knight who bore a field of gules was telling every observer that he possessed both the power to fight and the heart to serve a cause greater than himself. Across the field, azure offered a different kind of strength. This rich, steadfast blue spoke not of conflict but of fidelity. It represented loyalty, truth, and a deep, abiding piety. A shield of azure was a knight's pledge of his unwavering word, a declaration that his honor was as constant as the sky above. Then there was sable, the profound black of a moonless night. While it could acknowledge solemn remembrance, its more powerful meaning was one of absolute resolve. Sable represented constancy, a determination so fierce it would not waver even in the face of uncertainty. It was the color of a mystery that would not be solved and a will that would not be broken. In contrast, vert was the color of life itself. This lush green signaled hope, renewal, and a loyalty that grew from the heart, often associated with the chivalric ideals of love and devotion. A knight who chose vert connected his identity to the resilience of the natural world, suggesting a house that would endure and flourish. These colors were never chosen at random. They were a form of psychological expression, a pre-battle broadcast intended to shape the minds of both allies and enemies. Before the first lance was lowered, a coat of arms was already telling its story, projecting an image of unshakable virtue or fearsome resolve. This silent language of color reveals that heraldry was not just a means of identification, but a masterful tool of personal and political communication. Yet these colors needed a surface to shine from, and that is where the metals elevated a design into something truly celestial. Argent and ore, the heraldic names for silver and gold, were considered more than just pigments. They were the very light of the system, endowed with a status that bordered on the divine. Argent, with its pure white sheen, was not merely a background. It was a declaration of peace and sincerity, a reflective surface believed to mirror the truth and represent an unblemished innocence. A knight bearing a shield of argent presented himself as an open book, his intentions clear and his honor untarnished. Then there was ore, the radiant yellow of gold. This was the ultimate expression of nobility, symbolizing not just wealth but a generosity of spirit and an elevation of the mind. It connected the bearer directly to the power of the sun, and by extension to the divine right of kings. To carry a field of gold into a moment of tension was to make an extraordinary claim. It was a public assertion that your cause was not merely just, but that it was blessed by a higher power. This was not simple vanity. In an age where faith was the bedrock of society, this celestial association was a form of profound moral leverage. An opponent facing a knight whose shield blazed with the light of these metals was not just facing a man, but confronting what appeared to be the very favor of heaven. This perceived spiritual advantage could unsettle a challenger before any physical exchange, turning a coat of arms into a tool of psychological presence. But a solid field of color was only the beginning of the heraldic story. The true masters of this visual language understood the power of division. They sliced the shield itself into precise geometric territories, creating a canvas where multiple messages could be displayed at once. This was the art of partitioning, a strategic move that turned a simple emblem into a complex declaration. A shield could be divided per pale, split cleanly down the middle by a vertical line. It could be cut per fess, separated by a bold horizontal band, or it could be sectioned quarterly, creating 4 distinct quarters like a map of influence. Each partition was a deliberate choice, a way to weave together different strands of identity into a single, powerful statement. The most common use was to display alliance, particularly through a practice known as marshalling. When 2 noble houses were joined in marriage, their coats of arms were often combined on a single shield. The husband's ancestral arms would occupy one half, the wife's lineage the other, creating a living document of a union that merged lands, wealth, and political power. This was far more than a romantic gesture. It was a public announcement that 2 families were now one formidable entity, their combined resources and loyalties displayed for the world to see. On the battlefield, such a shield was a resume of influence. A knight bearing a partitioned shield might be signaling his command over the combined knights of two different lords. He might be staking a claim to territories inherited from both his father and his mother. Every line drawn across the shield was a border defined, an allegiance declared, a legacy claimed. This transformed the shield from a personal badge into a heraldic contract, a detailed map of political and military reach that friend and foe alike were expected to read and respect. Yet this intricate language of symbols and divisions required its own interpreters. A new class of expert began to emerge from the chaos of the tournament field, men who could decipher a shield story at a single glance. These were the heralds, far more than simple artists. They were the master linguists of this silent code, combining the skills of a historian, a diplomat, and a high-stakes event coordinator. At a grand tournament, the herald was the central authority. He stood before the roaring crowds and without notes would announce each competing knight, not just by name, but by reciting his full lineage and the meaning behind the blazon on his shield. His most critical duty was to ensure that no two knights bore identical arms. In a world where honor was everything, such a duplication was a profound theft of identity, a dishonor that could spark immediate conflict. The herald's watchful eye prevented this, maintaining the unique visual signature of every noble house. His knowledge made the spectacle possible, transforming a melee into a structured drama of recognized champions. But the herald's role extended far beyond the pageantry of the joust. On the battlefield, he served as a trusted messenger and an impartial observer. Shielded by a tradition of neutrality, he could ride between opposing armies to deliver challenges or negotiate terms. When the fighting was over, it was the herald who walked among those who had fallen, using his encyclopedic knowledge of coats of arms to identify the noble participants, ensuring that a lord was not lost among the common soldiers. This solemn duty made him a living record of noble genealogy and political alliance. His word on the correct use of a symbol was considered law, and his judgments could settle disputes over inheritance and title. The rise of the herald transformed heraldry from a system of personal preference into a state-sanctioned language of identity, regulated by an authority whose expertise was recognized by kings and knights alike. They became the guardians of this visual code, their influence echoing from the muddy fields of conflict to the highest chambers of power. A golden lion, frozen mid-roar on a field of crimson, was more than a picture. It was an argument. The choice to place the King of Beasts upon a shield was the most direct claim a knight could make to the throne of animal symbolism, a declaration that he embodied the very essence of royalty and raw power. Across the courts and gathering places of Europe, from the royal arms of England and Scotland to the banners of countless noble houses, the lion reigned supreme. Its dominance was no accident. It represented a triad of essential virtues: courage in the face of peril, nobility of bloodline and action, and the sheer physical strength required to command respect. To bear the lion was to announce you possessed the heart of the beast itself. Yet this message was far from simple. The lion's posture, its attitude, was a precise modifier that changed the entire meaning of the declaration. The most common and assertive stance was the lion rampant, the creature reared up on one hind leg, claws extended and ready. This was the ultimate symbol of a warrior in his prime, a spirit of untamed valor and protective might. But what if the lion was shown passant, walking calmly with one forepaw raised? This was not a symbol of rest, but of vigilant guardianship. It suggested a steady, watchful power, a lord overseeing the borders of his domain. Then there was the lion couchant, lying down but with its head held alertly up. This posture spoke of a powerful force at rest, a watchful presence that, while peaceful for the moment, was always prepared to rise and defend its own. Each variation was a conscious choice, a subtle piece of psychological projection intended for an audience that knew how to read the signs. A knight did not merely display a lion, he displayed a specific facet of his character and his readiness for the challenges ahead. This single, magnificent beast in all its forms perfectly encapsulates the core ambition of heraldry to project an idealized, powerful, and meticulously crafted identity onto the unpredictable landscape of the medieval world. But the lion did not rule alone. Across the shields of Europe, a whole world of creatures, both real and imagined, clamored for attention, each one a carefully chosen emblem of its bearer's soul. The eagle soared high among them, its piercing gaze and powerful wings making it a symbol of imperial authority and immense speed. To bear an eagle was to claim a perspective that saw all, a connection to the heavens that suggested one's actions were guided by a higher wisdom. On a different part of the field, the bear presented a more grounded, formidable power. This was not the noble valor of the lion, but a raw, protective ferocity. A knight who chose the bear was broadcasting a specific kind of strength, one rooted in the cunning to defend his family and the unshakable resolve to hold his lands against any threat. Then there were the beasts born from legend, creatures whose very impossibility amplified their message. The dragon was a paradox, a creature of immense power that symbolized not chaos but valiant defense. A lord who displayed the dragon was often one who had faced a monumental challenge and emerged victorious, his shield now serving as a permanent warning to any who would test his domain. Perhaps the most layered of all was the griffin, a majestic fusion of the lion's courage and the eagle's intelligence. This guardian of treasures and secrets represented a union of the best qualities of land and sky, suggesting a ruler who was both powerfully brave and strategically brilliant. Every beast in this heraldic menagerie was a deliberate piece of personal branding. A knight did not simply select an animal he found handsome. He chose a set of virtues he wished to embody and project. This visual shorthand allowed him to craft a public persona of calculated ferocity, unwavering guardianship, or divine insight, ensuring that even before he spoke, his shield had already told his story. While the lion roared and the bear stood its ground, another realm of symbolism soared high above the battlefield. Birds in heraldry offered a different kind of power, one connected not to earthly strength but to the aspirations of flight. They represented speed, a god's eye perspective, and a nobility of spirit that looked beyond the immediate fray. The undisputed king of the heraldic skies was the eagle. With its piercing gaze and unchallenged dominion over the heavens, it was the ultimate symbol of imperial authority and leadership. This was not merely a bird, it was a statement of empire. The Holy Roman Empire itself adopted the double-headed eagle, a creature looking both east and west to signal its claim of universal sovereignty. Any dynasty that placed an eagle on its shield was making a profound declaration of its lofty ambitions and its intention to rule with a vision that stretched to the horizon. It was the emblem of a house that saw itself not just as a local power, but as a central pillar of a much larger world. A different kind of bird spoke to the heart of the knightly quest. The falcon, often shown unhooded with its bells attached and ready for flight, was a symbol of intense focus and readiness. A noble who bore a falcon was announcing he was vigilant, eager for the hunt, and prepared to strike the moment an opportunity presented itself. This was not the distant gaze of the emperor, but the sharp, concentrated focus of a man of action in the political landscape. The bird's posture was everything. An unhooded falcon meant its bearer was actively engaged in his pursuit, a constant state of preparedness for the challenges of court and campaign. Even the humble swallow carried a powerful, deeply personal message. Its symbolism was one of swift and certain return. For a knight riding off to a distant conflict, a swallow on his shield was a poignant promise to his family and his people. It was a vow that he would complete his duty and swiftly find his way back home, a small emblem holding the immense weight of hope and loyalty. The choice of a bird was never arbitrary. It reflected a family's entire strategic outlook. Did they see themselves as imperial rulers, commanding from a great height, or as keen hunters, expertly navigating the intricate game of politics, or as loyal defenders, whose greatest ambition was the safety and continuity of their own hearth? These avian symbols lifted the language of the shield from the earth to the sky, adding a breathtaking layer of strategic ambition and heartfelt aspiration to the armor of a medieval warrior. But the most profound statements were made by creatures that never truly walked the earth. The dragon, a being of fire and ancient story, was a symbol of paradox. Far from representing chaos, its appearance on a shield often signaled a family that saw itself as a valiant protector. This was the guardian of great treasures and deep wisdom, an emblem for those who had faced and overcome near impossible challenges. To bear the dragon was to claim a power so formidable it could guide the greatest forces of legend, turning a myth into a personal declaration of resilience. Then there was the unicorn, an emblem of breathtaking purity and profound courage. Its single, spiraled horn was believed to have the power to cleanse and heal, making the creature a living symbol of enduring virtue. When the unicorn was shown as bound, as it is in the royal arms of Scotland, it conveyed a powerful message. This was not a representation of captivity, but of a mighty, untamable force that had been willingly brought into the service of the crown. It suggested that the ruler possessed the moral strength to align with even the most pure and powerful of beings. Perhaps the ultimate fusion of terrestrial and celestial power was the griffin. With the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle, this majestic hybrid was the guardian of the impossible. It represented a vigilant intelligence paired with raw courage, a mastery over the domains of both earth and sky. A lord who chose the griffin was making an extraordinary claim that his wisdom was as vast as his strength, and that his perspective encompassed every corner of his world. Adopting these mythical beings was the highest form of heraldic ambition. It was a way for a noble house to weave its identity directly into the fabric of folklore and lasting favor. This was not just a claim to land or title, but a claim to a destiny that transcended the ordinary. By aligning their name with a dragon, a unicorn, or a griffin, these families were crafting a legend for themselves, one designed to inspire awe and command respect for generations to come. Amidst the roaring beasts and soaring eagles, a quieter language was growing in the fields of heraldry. The plant kingdom offered a potent vocabulary for peace, continuity, and the deep roots of a family's identity. While a lion promised ferocity, a flower could promise reconciliation. No symbol demonstrates this power more than the Tudor rose. This iconic emblem did not simply depict a flower, it wove together two warring houses. The red rose of Lancaster and the white rose of York were merged into a single, beautiful hybrid, transforming a symbol of civil conflict into a permanent declaration of peace and union. It was a stroke of political genius rendered in petals, a message that the land itself would now heal and flourish under a new, united crown. Across the Channel, another floral symbol held the weight of divine authority. The fleur de lis, a stylized lily, was the undeniable mark of the French monarchy. Its three petals were rich with meaning, representing faith, wisdom, and chivalry, but also the Holy Trinity itself. To bear the fleur de lis was to claim a direct connection to purity, light, and a state of perfection granted by a higher power. It was more than a royal badge, It was a visual argument for the divine right of kings, suggesting that the ruler's authority was as natural and blessed as a flawless flower in bloom. Other plants spoke to a different kind of strength, one built over generations. The mighty oak tree, or even a single oak leaf, was a heraldic anchor. It symbolized a family's endurance, resilience, and deep roots in the land they held. A shield bearing an oak was not boasting of a single warrior's courage, but of a dynasty's antiquity and unwavering steadfastness. It said that this house had weathered countless storms and would stand for countless more. In contrast, a sheaf of wheat bound together conveyed a message of prosperity and community. It pointed to agricultural wealth, to the bounty of the land, and to the Lord's role as a generous provider for his people. This was the heraldry of stewardship, a reminder that true power was also measured in the ability to nurture and sustain. These botanical symbols provided a crucial balance to the martial language of the shield. They allowed a family to express its hopes for a peaceful legacy, its sacred connections, and its enduring bond with the soil it governed. A coat of arms could now tell a complete story, one where the strength of the oak supported the purity of the lily, and the promise of the rose ensured that the legacy would be one of prosperity, not just power. A shield could command an army without a single beast or blossom. The most ancient and authoritative designs in heraldry are pure geometry, a vocabulary of power built from lines and angles known as ordinaries. These were the stark, functional shapes born for the battlefield, where instant recognition was everything. A wide band across the top of the shield, called a chief, did more than fill space. It was a clear declaration of authority, a symbolic claim of dominion over everything displayed beneath it. This was the heraldic equivalent of a crown, setting the bearer apart as a leader. Then there was the pale, a bold vertical stripe running down the center. This powerful divider commanded attention, focusing the eye and often representing a knight's unwavering strength, a pillar of support for his cause. Perhaps the most dynamic of all was the bend, a diagonal stripe sweeping from the top corner to the opposite side. This slashing line was frequently associated with a knight's sword belt, the mark of his rank or a specific military command. It conveyed motion, ambition, and a readiness for action that a static symbol could not. And then there was the chevron, that unmistakable inverted V shape. It was not chosen at random. Its form perfectly mirrored the sturdy rafters that held up a great hall's roof. To bear a chevron was to make a public promise of protection and faithful service, a vow to be the architectural support for one's lord, family, and people. These geometric charges were not merely decorative, they were a direct functional code. On a chaotic field, a knight marked with a prominent bend could be instantly identified as the leader of a specific battalion. A shield bearing a chief signaled to all others where the ultimate command resided. This was a system where visual simplicity translated to tactical clarity. The enduring power of these shapes reminds us that the most effective messages are often the simplest, a stark geometry of rank and role that could be understood in a single, decisive glance. Yet even the most powerful geometry could be infused with a higher purpose. In an age where faith shaped every aspect of life, one symbol rose above all others in its frequency and its power, the cross. But this was not a single, uniform emblem. It appeared in a dozen distinct forms, each a variation on a sacred theme with its own deep history. The simplest was the Greek cross, its arms of equal length forming a clear declaration of the bearer's personal devotion and unwavering piety. This was a fundamental statement of faith, a spiritual anchor for those who carried it forward. Then there was the cross potent, its arms ending in sturdy T-shapes that resembled the heads of a crutch. This was the cross of strength, the very symbol adopted by the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem. To bear this cross was to connect one's identity directly to that distant, holy city, a claim of spiritual fortitude and a tangible link to a sacred cause. Another form, the cross moline with its ends gracefully split and curved, was said to represent the reciprocal promises of the feudal world. Its shape evoked the iron staples that held millstones together, a perfect analogy for the mutual obligations binding a lord to his vassals, a relationship that was itself considered a sacred contract. For a knight embarking on a great journey, adopting any form of the cross was far more than a decoration. It was a public vow, a solemn pledge made before his community and his deity. He was sewing this symbol onto his tunic and painting it on his shield as a request for divine protection and a declaration that his efforts now served a holy purpose. This transformed the cross from a passive emblem into a piece of active spiritual armor. On the field, it became a universal rallying point, a sacred banner that could unite men from different kingdoms and languages under a single celestial command. The cross in all its forms was the ultimate fusion of earthly commitment and heavenly ambition, a symbol that claimed every action was in service to a divine plan. Yet even beyond the language of beasts and crosses lay a more intimate form of expression, the human form itself carved onto the shield. These figures and fragments brought a powerful, personal dimension to heraldry, connecting the bearer directly to stories of faith, commitment, and primal origin. One of the most poignant symbols was the disembodied arm, known as a dexter arm embowed, shown in armor and often gripping a sword. This was not a symbol of aggression, but of a solemn pledge. It represented a family's long history of military service and a continued willingness to stand in defense of their people. This single arm was a distillation of the knightly oath, a permanent reminder that their strength was pledged to a cause greater than themselves. In stark contrast stood the figure of the wild man, or woodwose. This being, often depicted wreathed in leaves and wielding a great club, was a symbol of raw, untamed power. He represented a deep, foundational connection to the land itself, a strength that existed before the walls of castles and the rules of court. A noble house that adopted the woodwose was making a bold claim to ancient territorial rights, suggesting their lineage and authority were as primal and enduring as the ancient forest. Perhaps the most revered human symbols were the saints. The appearance of a specific saint's figure or emblem on a shield was a profound declaration of patronage and personal devotion. It signaled that the family placed its destiny under the protection of that holy figure, believing their guidance was as crucial in any trial as any physical armor. A shield bearing the image of St. George, for instance, was not merely a decoration. It was a public alignment with the ideals of chivalric virtue and the triumph of good over adversity. These human forms transformed the coat of arms from a simple identifier into a sacred canvas. They wove together the threads of martial duty, ancestral land, and deep spiritual belief into a single, compelling narrative about who the bearer was, and more importantly, who they aspired to be. This visual language of heraldry held a delightful secret, a form of inside joke known as canting arms. A coat of arms could become a literal puzzle, a visual pun that played directly on the family name. For the Lucy family, the solution was swimming right on the surface of their shield. They did not choose a fearsome beast, but instead displayed 3 luces, which is the heraldic term for the pike, a freshwater fish. It was a direct and rather clever auditory pun. Their name was Lucy and their symbol was a luce. In a similar way, the Trumpington family announced their presence not with a lion's roar, but with the blast of a trumpet. This practice, known in French as armes parlantes or speaking arms, transformed the shield into a rebuse, a picture-based riddle that spelled out the family identity for anyone who knew how to look. This was far more than mere heraldic humor. In a world where few people could read or write, a visual pun was a brilliant memory aid. A complex and forgettable surname could be cemented in the public mind by a simple, memorable image. The sight of 3 fish instantly called the name Lucy to mind. The sound of a trumpet, even in painted form, evoked the name Trumpington. A lord riding through his lands, his banner flying, was not just a display of authority. He was a walking advertisement for his own name, ensuring that every farmer and merchant knew exactly who he was. This clever fusion of name and symbol made a family's identity inseparable from its public image. Decoding these ancient puns today offers a charming window into the medieval mind, revealing a wit and creativity that went far beyond the battlefield. It shows us families actively crafting their own stories, using ingenuity to weave their name directly into the fabric of visual culture. What began as a practical system for identification had evolved into a canvas for personal expression, where a family could quite literally make a name for itself. Even the most carefully crafted legacy can fall into a strange and silent limbo. This is the second great mystery of heraldry, the case of the abeyant arms. For all its focus on unbroken male lineage, the system had to confront a simple biological reality. Sometimes, a noble line would simply end, with no direct male heir to inherit the title and the shield. But this did not mean the legacy vanished. Instead, it entered a complex legal state known as abeyance, a suspension of identity that could last for generations. In this quiet space, the coat of arms became a symbol without a bearer, waiting in the historical shadows for someone to prove a claim. The most common trigger was when a title passed through a daughter. If a lord had no sons but several daughters, the inheritance was divided equally among them. Suddenly, you had multiple co-heiresses, each with an equal share of the bloodline, yet no single one held a claim superior to her sisters. The title and the right to bear the ancestral arms could not be split like a piece of property, so by ancient law it was placed in abeyance. It was frozen in time, a dynasty paused. This legal suspense reveals something profound. A coat of arms was not seen as a mere picture. It was considered a tangible asset, as real and valuable as the family castle or its farmlands. Its fate was a matter of serious legal consequence, debated in courts and scrutinized by heralds. Cases of abeyance could linger for centuries, creating intricate puzzles for genealogists to unravel. Researchers might spend years tracing faded family trees, searching for a living descendant of one of those original sisters who could step forward, and by proving their lineage, awaken the dormant title and its symbolic power. This process shows that heraldic identity was not just about the past, but about a future possibility, a legacy so potent it could be revived after hundreds of years of silence. What does it mean for a symbol to wait, and what does its eventual revival tell us about the unyielding human desire to reconnect with a forgotten name? The most rigid rules often create the most compelling exceptions. For every 1,000 coats of arms that strictly followed the rule of tincture, a handful dared to break it, and their defiance tells a story far richer than any correct design could. Consider the arms of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, a symbol of profound spiritual significance. It presented a field of pure silver upon which stood 5 golden crosses. This was a clear and deliberate choice, metal placed directly upon metal. According to enduring tradition, this was not an error but a special allowance. It was believed that the kingdom itself, founded through immense effort in a distant land, operated under a celestial mandate so powerful that it transcended the earthly rules of visual identification. This shield was a theological statement in symbolic form, a claim that its bearer answered to a higher authority than any heraldic court. Another powerful anomaly flies on the flag of Albania. A black, double-headed eagle stands boldly against a field of vibrant red. This is a classic color-on-color combination, a pairing that would have been unthinkable for a simple knight on a European battlefield. Yet for Albania, this stark contrast became a national declaration of resilience and unique identity. The eagle, an ancient symbol for the Albanian people, was rendered in the most potent and contrasting way possible to declare a spirit that would not be subdued, a visual declaration that became a source of unified pride. These are not historical mistakes waiting to be corrected. They are calculated acts of symbolic expression. A standard coat of arms communicates lineage and virtue, but an unusual one often shares a narrative of exceptionalism. It might claim a special right that places the bearer above common custom, or it might honor a foundational moment so pivotal that the rules were rewritten to hold its memory. Investigating these rule breakers is where heraldic research becomes detective work. Each variation is a clue pointing to a moment when a family, a kingdom, or a people felt their story was so extraordinary that the established visual language was insufficient to contain it. They chose to be unforgettable, even at the cost of being unconventional, weaving their most powerful legends directly into the fabric of their identity. A lord's banner was his beating heart on the field, in the swirling chaos of a medieval engagement where shouted orders were swallowed by the clash of steel. That single piece of embroidered cloth was the only constant. It was a mobile command post, a fixed point in a storm of confusion. Every knight and soldier in his retinue knew one simple, life-saving rule: fight toward the banner. Its location dictated the flow of the entire unit, a visual anchor for rallying, regrouping, and launching a coordinated attack. To lose sight of it was to be lost. But to lose the banner itself to an enemy hand was a catastrophe beyond any single loss of life. It signaled the utter dissolution of the unit, a profound dishonor that could shatter a family's reputation for generations. This is why the most trusted and courageous knights were given the sacred duty of being the standard bearer, a position of immense honor and equally immense peril, for they were the living shield for the symbol that held their entire company together. Beyond the banner, heraldry clad the knight from head to toe, transforming him into a walking emblem. Over his armor, he wore a flowing surcoat blazoned with his arms. His shield displayed the same pattern, and even his horse was draped in a matching trapper. This was not about vanity. It was about creating a cohesive and instantly recognizable visual identity for his entire retinue. In the thick dust and confusion, a man-at-arms did not need to see the face of his lord. He only needed to catch a glimpse of those familiar colors and shapes on a surcoat to know he was following the right leader. This system turned a disordered mob of individual fighters into a visually organized force. The ability to distinguish the golden lions of your ally from the red eagles of your foe in a split second was not a minor detail. It was a fundamental tactical advantage that often decided the outcome of a charge. This visual language also wielded a powerful psychological force. The sight of your own lord's banner, still flying high amid the struggle, was a continuous injection of resolve. It was a silent promise that the fight was not over, that order remained, and that honor was intact. Conversely, recognizing the arms of a famously feared opponent charging toward you could plant a seed of deep uncertainty. That recognizable symbol carried the weight of past victories and a reputation for ferocity, a psychological burden that could make a soldier's grip on his weapon feel just a little less sure. In this way, heraldry functioned as a core component of medieval military science, a sophisticated visual technology for organizing the chaos of conflict, directing the flow of battle, and steadying the hearts of the men who fought beneath its colors. The roar of the tournament crowd was a herald's greatest test. While the battlefield demanded clarity, the tournament demanded theater, and the herald was its master of ceremonies. His voice cut through the festive noise, not just announcing names, but performing a grand recitation of lineage and virtue for each anonymous knight who entered the lists. He was the living key to a spectacle of identity, decoding the complex stories emblazoned on shields and horse trappers for an audience hungry for drama. For the competing knight, this was his ultimate audition. His coat of arms was no longer just a military identifier. It was his resume, his personal advertisement, and his marriage proposal all rolled into one vibrant visual package. A young knight from a minor house could arrive unknown, but if his arms were striking and his performance brave, the herald's announcement would cement his name and his symbol in the minds of powerful patrons and influential families. He was building a chivalric brand, and every charge, every shattered lance was a statement of his own worth. The symbolism he chose was critical. A lion might speak of inherited courage, but a rare mythical beast like the griffin could suggest unique wisdom and ambition, setting him apart from a dozen other competitors. The lavishness of his display, from the intricate embroidery on his surcoat to the polished metal of his shield, broadcast his wealth and his taste, signaling he was a man of substance, ready to be welcomed into the highest circles of nobility. A single victorious pass could transform that symbol from a claim into a legend, making his arms a recognized currency of fame across the realm. In the dust of the tiltyard, heraldry completed its evolution, becoming the essential language of personal ambition in a world where reputation was the truest form of power. A shield could be a legal document as powerful as any signed treaty. In the quiet halls of influence, far from the clash of swords, heraldry evolved into a masterful language of political persuasion, a tool to affirm leadership and cement the standing of a new dynasty. Consider the moment Henry Tudor emerged victorious from Bosworth Field. His first and most brilliant act was not a speech, but a symbol. He merged the red rose of his own Lancastrian house with the white rose of his former Yorkist rivals, creating the unified Tudor rose. This was not mere decoration, it was a stroke of political genius rendered in petals. With a single image, he declared the close of a long period of civil strife, transforming emblems of division into a promise of peace and union. It was a message designed for a population weary of conflict, a visual argument that the new king's authority was built on reconciliation, not just victory. This was heraldry as statecraft, a silent, ever-present form of communication that told a new story to every citizen, from the noble in his castle to the farmer in his field. This strategy of visual argument extended to the very structure of the shield itself through the practice of quartering. When a monarch gained new lands through marriage, inheritance, or successful negotiation, he would often add the arms of that territory to his own. His personal shield would be divided into sections, like a map of influence, with his ancestral symbols displayed alongside those of his new domains. A king's coat of arms could become a rich, complex tapestry of lions, castles, eagles, and fleurs de lis, each one a bold, unspoken claim to sovereignty. To look upon such a shield was to see a visual resume of a king's power, a declaration that his reach now extended across mountains, rivers, and distant seas. In an age without newspapers or widespread literacy, this was the most effective form of mass communication. The royal arms were stamped on coins, carved above court doorways, and woven into the tapestries that lined great hall walls. They were a constant, gentle reminder of who held influence, the tradition by which they claimed to hold it, and the historical or family ties that supported their reign. Every glance at a coin or a castle gate reinforced the narrative of a stable, established order, making the coat of arms one of the most subtle and powerful instruments of governance ever created. This secret language of symbols required its own precise grammar. To record a coat of arms without a drawing, heralds developed a unique linguistic code called blazon. This was a highly technical language, a set of exact specifications derived from Norman French. Its purpose was absolute clarity, ensuring that a herald in London and a painter in Rome could recreate the same complex shield from a single, unillustrated description. The perspective of a blazon is crucial. It describes the shield from the viewpoint of the knight carrying it. So, the dexter side, meaning the right, is actually on the viewer's left. The language follows a strict, unbreakable sequence. It begins by naming the field, the background color of the entire shield. Next, it describes the most prominent ordinary, the primary geometric shape. Finally, it details all the charges, the symbols placed on top, always specifying their color, their position, and their posture or attitude. Consider the powerful royal arms of England. Its entire design is captured in just 6 words: gules, 3 lions passant guardant in pale or. Decoded, this means a red shield with 3 gold lions walking and facing the viewer, arranged in a vertical column. This linguistic precision transformed heraldry from a local art into a universal system. A blazon could be written in a registry, called out across a tournament field, or sent in a sealed letter, and its meaning would remain perfectly intact. To master blazon is to learn the syntax of this silent language, allowing you to hear a description and instantly visualize the shield it creates, a testament to the power of words to build a world of symbols. The castle walls have crumbled, but the symbols remain. The language of heraldry simply learned to speak in a new accent, migrating from the tournament field to the very heart of our modern communities. Cities and universities adopted this visual grammar for themselves, creating civic coats of arms that told a public story. A shield for a port city might display a sailing ship and a sheaf of wheat, announcing its lifeblood of trade and agriculture. A university emblem could feature an open book and a torch, symbolizing its dedication to learning and enlightenment. This was heraldry for everyone, no longer the exclusive right of a noble class, but a shared identity for each citizen and scholar. It answered the same ancient question: who are we, and what do we stand for, but now for an entire populace. This symbolic language found an unexpected new home in the gleaming world of commerce. Look at the hood of a luxury automobile and you will see a fierce animal, a predator rendered in chrome, making the same claim to power and prestige that a medieval lion once did on a shield. Modern corporations instinctively reach for the shield shape to frame their logos, a quiet invocation of protection, stability, and trust. A global shipping company might use a stylized wing, echoing the heraldic eagle's promise of speed and far-reaching influence. These are not accidents of design. They are the continued use of a primal visual vocabulary, one that bypasses conscious thought to speak directly to our deepest associations with strength, heritage, and reliability. The boardroom, in its own way, became a new kind of gathering place where brands seek recognition and loyalty. Even in service to one's country, the legacy is unmistakable. Military units from every nation wear intricate patches on their uniforms, each one a direct descendant of the medieval coat of arms. These are not mere decorations. They are condensed narratives of unit history, shared purpose, and the values they hold dear. A single patch can feature a lightning bolt for speed, a dagger for close engagement, and a Latin motto declaring the unit's core principle. This modern emblem fosters the same powerful spirit of unity that a knight's banner once did, creating a tangible bond between members and a visible reminder of the tradition they carry forward. It answers the same fundamental human need to belong to something larger than oneself, to carry a shared identity into a moment of great challenge. Ultimately, heraldry's true legacy is not found in any single emblem, but in the unchanging human impulse it reveals. We still seek to answer the question first asked on a dusty medieval field: who am I and whose am I? We display our affiliations on team jerseys, we brand our businesses with meaningful icons, and we craft online personas with curated images. The methods have changed, but the motive remains identical: the profound need to project our chosen identity to the world and to find our place within a tribe. The silent language of the shield is still being spoken all around us, if you only know how to read the signs. A new generation of heralds now gathers not in royal courts, but in digital forums. Online communities and sophisticated software have transformed a once exclusive discipline into a global conversation, allowing anyone with an interest to design, blazon, and debate coats of arms with peers from every continent. This is no mere hobby. It is a vibrant scholarly network where the ancient rules of tincture and partition are analyzed with the same rigor as any historical text, ensuring the language remains alive and evolving. Far from being a relic, heraldry is actively growing through official state authorities. Nations like South Africa and Canada maintain heraldic offices that grant new, deeply symbolic arms to citizens, municipalities, and corporations. These modern emblems brilliantly fuse traditional structure with contemporary meaning. A new grant for a coastal city might feature a stylized wave alongside a traditional chevron, or a technology firm might receive arms bearing a microchip rendered in classic heraldic form. This process proves that the system is not frozen in the medieval era, but is a living tradition, continually adapting to tell the stories of our time. What ancient symbol would you adapt to represent your own community's story today? The core principles of this medieval art have never been more relevant. In our visually saturated digital world, the heraldic ideals of distinctiveness, meaningful symbolism, and clear communication are the absolute foundation of effective design. The rule of tincture finds its echo in the high contrast needed for an app icon to be instantly recognizable on a crowded screen. The need for a unique blazon is mirrored in the quest for a memorable corporate logo that stands out in a vast marketplace. Every successful brand identity is, in essence, a modern coat of arms, a simple, symbolic statement designed to convey trust, purpose, and values at a single glance. The secret language of the shield has simply found a new expression in the global exchange of ideas and a new canvas on the glowing screens of our devices, proving that this ancient system of visual identity is as powerful and essential now as it ever was in earlier times. From the anonymous knights of the 12th century to the corporate logos of the 21st, the secret language of heraldry has proven to be one of history's most enduring and adaptable creations. We have journeyed through its origins in the practical need to be seen on a battlefield, decoded the rich symbolism of its colors, its beasts, and its stark geometric shapes, and witnessed its power to command armies, win fame in the tiltyard, and legitimize new kingdoms. Heraldry was never mere decoration. It was a sophisticated system for managing identity, power, and communication in a world of growing complexity. The next time your eyes pass over a university seal, a civic flag, or the emblem on a product you trust, look closer. You are not just seeing a design, you are reading a fragment of that ancient, powerful language, a whisper from a time when a symbol was a promise and a shield could tell a story. If this exploration into the world of hidden symbols has captivated you, we would love to hear which heraldic beast you would choose for your own coat of arms. Share your choice in the comments and be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the hidden corners of history.